Welcome to the Inspired by Jacqueline podcast, a refreshing place for women struggling with entrepreneurship, faith, or infertility. Stay tuned for today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome again to another episode of Inspired by Jacqueline. I know I always say I'm super excited, but I am really doubly super excited. You'll find out why throughout with the conversation as to why this person is very special to me. And this is a very special conversation that we're having. So I am bringing to you none other than Mandy Refvik. She is the author, health tech entrepreneur, and advocate for women navigating the challenges of infertility. Drawing from her personal experience with IVF, she penned the book, One More Shot: Hormones, Heartbreak, and Humor Surviving IVF at 40ish, where she shares her emotional journey with wit and resilience. In addition to her writing, Mandy is passionate about supporting startups in the healthcare space, particularly those innovating around fertility, diabetes, and women's health. She combines her entrepreneurial experience with her dedication to helping others by offering practical advice and inspiration for women balancing entrepreneurship, faith, and infertility. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I want to share that this is why I'm excited. So Mandy and I, we connected how many years ago?
I met in 2014, but I
Mhm.
think we met in 2013 when we
Yep.
started doing the wedding
So
planning.
yeah, so Mandy was actually one of my clients in my event planning business, and her husband now, Mr. Johnny, were my couple and my client. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. Wine, vineyard, corks, all this stuff, everything corks, right? And it was such a beautiful experience, family, right? A lot of
Yes.
family, love, and joy. And then years later, we reconnected, and it was like a full circle moment type of thing.
Yeah.
And so I am really excited to have you here and just connect on this level.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And I am excited too, because since 2014, there were a lot of things that trickled when we were wedding planning that are still connected to till this day, you and I.
Yeah.
Like my book, we talked about my book. You're in my book. Because there was a big moment in time when my husband and I were getting married that there was this question about children that popped up way before then. So prior to getting married, there's this question about children later on until this day. And it's still a continual question. And I'm going to be 50 soon. Why am I still having this conversation?
Yeah.
But it's been there. And you and I have been connected since then.
Yeah. And then to be connected on this whole different level,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to have my conversation with her. And I can't wait to see you in person. So you got to tell me when you're in New York, or
Yes,
I'll let you know when I'm in
definitely.
Georgia. But yeah, yes, yes, yes. And I know you come from a big family, and family is like something that's always, and like you said, conversation about family and having family and building a family. Then this happens, right? How did you get to this point of having all these conversations? And then when did you find out that you were going through some challenges?
So family's always been a big thing growing up. I came from a big family. It's a very traditional lifestyle where the women are here to provide children, create a
Mhm.
family, and that was that. I never really followed that trend. My trend was more career based and looked up at you. I look at you as such like an important, I don't even know the word, but you as a businesswoman, like I remember when we met, you were like, this is my baby. This is me. This is how I'm doing. And I'm like, I want to be like her. Like that's what I want to be. So having a child wasn't as like aspirational as a career. I wanted it, but it wasn't like in my forefront. It was something that I figured it would happen when it happened, or when it was the right time.
Mm.
And I went through so many years of just pursuing my career, having built a good relationship with my husband. And it wasn't until like one random day, we were having dinner with some friends, and they were like, hey, can we bring another couple with us? We want to kill two birds with one stone and just, meet them and see you guys. And we're like, yeah, sure, why not? They bring another couple into the dinner table, and this woman starts talking about infertility and how
Mm.
she's been trying to have a baby. And it never dawned on me that all the years that my husband and I have been together, that there was an infertility issue. It
Mm.
never triggered, because the conversation's always been about just building the family, how easy it
Yeah.
is. It's just easy. It's easy to,
Yeah.
your only thing to do on this planet is to have babies. But there was never a conversation that says, or that happened, or a topic, or an elderly that said, I had trouble, even
Yeah.
though I found out later on that there was a lot of problems. But they kept that very quiet, under lock and key, and they didn't share that side of themselves. So this one woman's talking about her infertility, and how she found a infertility specialist, and how he was a magician and he made her have this baby, and she's so happy. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. Like, just, you know, I'm a New Yorker, like, whatever. Yeah, she's just talking, she's just blowing smoke. But it did leave little like notes in my head,
Something.
something to say, well, okay, as much as I'm rolling my eyes at her, what does this really mean? And she kept saying IVF, IVF, IVF. And I had no idea what IVF
Mm.
meant. I was sitting there, I'm just quiet and I'm nodding nicely. And I'm like, IVF, what does IVF mean? And I'm like, she's talking about fertility. So I was like, okay, fertility, but what does IV? And
Mm.
you can bleep this out, but in my mind, I'm like, in the vagina? What do you vagina
I love
IVF
it.
mean? What does IVF mean? Because we were never taught this. Like, it wasn't, my OB would never bring this up. Like, I never had these conversations with anyone.
Mhm.
So I never knew that that was an issue, because family was always just, it's supposed to happen as easily as a blink of the eye.
Yeah, and that's the same with me in reference to just not having that conversation early in my life, or even knowing of anyone in my family that had an issue like that ever. And then you mentioned something in reference to your OB, not even, or your GYN, not even having conversations about
No,
that. It's like, wait a minute. And that's one of the reasons why the birth of this podcast, the birth of my platform, because it's like, I can't believe like 30 years ago that there's still conversation about this. It's still like a struggle, it's still a challenge. And it's like, wait a minute. Yeah, there's social media and there's some stuff up in social media, but to from that level is one side of the conversation. But then there's that communication piece of people understanding, having that conversation of we can speak about openly, so that it prevents someone from going. At least it is a struggle either way, whether you know or not. But if you're going into it with some knowledge, I feel like it's better than not having
yeah,
anything,
exactly.
right?
And what's funny is that, like, as much as we put so much weight on social media to have that answer there, unless you've put it in the algorithm, you're still in the dark.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you go to your OB or your GYN, and all they're like, okay, let's do a pap smear.
That's
What do
it.
do you need birth control? Like, okay, I'm wondering about, like, we didn't talk about me not having a baby. I've been coming to you for the past 5 years. You've never had that, like, talk with me. Hey, do you want
Yeah.
to have children? Well, yeah. Okay, well, there should be some tests that we should be looking at. There was never a conversation. So it's like, if I'm not getting it at home, I'm not getting it at my doctor's office, if my analytics and my, my social media isn't looking for that, because I don't know that that's missing, I'm left in the dark. And I felt like I was completely left in the dark.
Yeah.
And that became really, really overwhelming and like anxiety driven, because when she started talking about IVF, I was like, okay, I need to go home and Google the crap out of IVF, because
Mhm.
like I don't even know what she's talking about. But clearly she's excited. She's having a baby. There's a magician fertility doctor. So there was all these like little nuggets that she was dropping, and I picked up on it. I went home and I started Googling, and I'm like, wow, like I now what do I do? Now where
Mhm.
do I start? Because no one's had this conversation with me. And realistically, she didn't have this conversation with me. She was sharing her story.
Yeah.
And that just that sharing of her story was what introduced me to this. For
Mm.
me to realize that, okay, there's some issues, and now what are the issues? And then of course then you go down the rabbit hole, and then you think that something's wrong with you, and
Mhm.
like, okay, who do you talk to? Who do you talk to? Where do you start? Where's the starting point? Like in anything, there's an A through Z, but where is A? And how do I know
Yeah.
what A is? And that's where my understanding and my journey began.
And did you go once you had that and you spoke to your doctor, or did you go to the magician? How, like, did you have to go through the other processes to then get to IVF, like the Clomid, all the other processes, treatments?
So I'll give you a little backstory. I went to 4 OBs, and I said, so my husband and I want to have a baby, and it's not happening. The first one said, oh, well, you have to go to a fertility specialist. So I said, okay, what is this fertility specialist? Like, am I looking for a different code based on my insurance? Like, what am I
Right.
looking for? What I thought OB meant women's health,
Everything. Yeah,
everything,
everything.
everything. Like, even if you couldn't do the process there, you would at least provide me the information
Yes.
or a referral or something. And he kind of was like, like, I don't know, wasn't interested. So I kind of left there still like confused about what to do. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go home, and I'm going to be, I'm going to go on my insurance, and I'm going to find me a fertility specialist. That's what he said I needed. So
Mhm.
I'm on there, and my insurance doesn't cover fertility specialists. So I was
Mhm.
like, okay. So I'm like, all right, how much could that really be out of pocket? Right. So like, yeah, that shouldn't be a big deal. It's like $40, $20 copay. Okay. Again, naive to insurance and all of, I was naive to everything, and all in one cloud. I called a fertility specialist, and they said it's a $250 visit. I
Mhm.
was like, okay, well, what comes in this visit? And like, you just talk to the doctor. Okay, but are there tests? Like, what are we doing? Like, it's $250. Like,
Yeah.
it's not cheap for
Yeah.
just a sit down. And they're like, well, if you have to do tests, then it's gonna cost. And like, if your insurance company doesn't cover it, you have to pay for everything out of pocket. So I was like, okay, the tests and everything, what would that cost? Again,
Mhm.
naive, thinking it wouldn't be that much. About 50K. Oh, okay. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not making 50K. Clearly my insurance company is not even covering the fertility specialist. So I'm on the wrong road right now. So I was like, okay, I hung up the phone. I was like, maybe he's just that one guy that's trying to
Mhm.
hustle. Again, New Yorker state of mind, there are hustlers out there. So
Yep.
I was adamant. I'm like, I'm gonna keep calling. I called about 6 different companies. They're all 50K to 150K for everything.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, well, what do I do? Where
Yeah.
do I go? Like, what's the next plan? Then then I think that's when all the mental instability and
Mhm.
anger and frustration and emotions started to like
Mhm.
really like accumulate, because it felt like rejections from
Yep.
doctors. It felt like, okay, well, if I now I've chosen to say I want to have a child. Before, I thought it would just happen. Now I have to figure out the situation, And now I'm beating myself up for not thinking that I should wanted a child in the beginning. So
Mhm.
now I've beaten myself up. I've beaten myself up. I'm a woman. I can't have a child. I didn't say I wanted a child from the age of 2. I didn't say that was my, my future.
Mhm.
Maybe I put this curse on myself. Maybe I ruined this for me. And then
And the
that
list goes on.
list goes on and on and on.
Yeah. And the thing is that, like, for me, I started off with my OB again because I was trying and nothing was happening. And so they're like, okay, has it been a year? Da, da, da. I'm like, come to think about it, like it was longer,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just got married recently, whatever. And yeah, is almost more than a year. And so they started the tests and they started, all that stuff. Luckily, that was covered. But when it was conversation of IVF, it was money because the insurance didn't cover IVF. So that's a whole different conversation, right? Of finding out what the options were and
Yeah.
then coverage, like you said. And so when it's not covered, and then this yin yang of yes, it's covered. No, it's not covered. Yes, it's
Mhm.
covered. Today is covered. Tomorrow is not. So,
But
and
at least you had the conversation. I didn't even get to that conversation.
but I feel that we should have conversations from the moment we see a GYN.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
why is it just an annual pap smear?
Yeah.
Then we don't have a fertility conversation.
Mm-mm.
That's something that I'm advocating for now. And
Yes.
that's why the platforms and everything, because it's like I want conversations sooner than later. I in hopes for another person, another woman who is looking to try but maybe is not thinking about it at the time, but have knowledge, right? If we have our own choices, if we're fighting for having choices, for making choices over our body, then it's also having knowledge beforehand of everything we have to have choices about. And then one time, like I actually was covered for fertility specialist after the OB because I did my part with them and then something happened and I was a hot mess with emotions. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
later with you.
Yeah.
So I found a magician, but not a magician to the fact that, I was able to, but magician in the fact that the care was so different and it was really good while it lasted. And then for me, my emotional roller coaster was way too much month to month for a 10-year period that I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like I lost who I was. I'm done. I need to find myself.
Yeah.
So with that, like, because I don't want you to share your entire book because I want people to get your book. I
A lot in
like,
the
when did that part of aha moment or that peak of you having your daughter, how many years transpired from the moment you started to that?
So just to touch back on what we were talking about, since I never really got to sit down with a doctor and there was a lot of, ping pong
Mhm.
with me from OBs to what I can afford or what kind of tests I would take, that's when I went back to like the conversation with my family. And I started to become really open and say, this is what, Johnny and I want to do. And we're having a hard time and I don't know where to go. And I think that conversation came up because it was so low in my life and I was so emotional and I didn't know where to turn. So I turned to the family. And I know they didn't know because they didn't know, they knew as much as I did, even less. I
Mhm.
was one Googling like at all hours of the night, trying to learn what infertility is and trying to be the doctor for myself off of Google.
Mhm.
So one day my dad was driving. He lives in Trinidad. We have property out there. And he's like, hey, I heard on the radio that there is this fertility center here in Trinidad. Maybe you can come here because you've been having so many issues finding a doctor in the States. Maybe it'll be cheaper here. We have property here. We
Mhm.
have family. You have the support. I can be here for you guys. Let's see. And I was like, yeah, no way. knowing hell am I going abroad to do something like that. You're crazy. That's just not going to happen. The US is like the best in healthcare. I got another naive moment in my life. Why would I go out of country to have a baby? That's just dumb. And it took years, maybe like I would say 2 years of him harassing me and saying, look
Mm,
into it, look into it, look into it. But prior to that, it was about 5 years of us not
mm,
having, who have tried and not had a child. So at this
mhm.
point, it was 7 years. So I didn't even get to the conversation from my doctor to say, well, how long have you guys been trying? It had
Wow.
already been 7 years. And I did the math. Like I said, I became my own doctor. I was like
Mhm,
Googling my own symptoms and
mhm.
doing all the wrong things you shouldn't do. And I finally caved and I said, you know what? Let me call this company. Like he keeps telling me about it. I called them and I made an appointment. They said, yeah, we'll do a consult over the phone. You can send me your
Wow.
labs and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, how much is it? Like, it's free. It's a consult. Like, we're having a conversation with you. Oh, whoa. Now, you see, this is why I won't go out of country because this doesn't seem real. You have to
Like, what's
charge
the
me.
gimmick?
That doesn't make sense. And she was like, well, I need you to provide me these types of lab requests so that I can see your eggs, your hormones, like levels, and all this stuff. So I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, how would I get those tests? She's like, I'll write you a script. You go to your OB, let them do the test, send it back to me. I'll do a review and we can discuss it. That's something's not right here. But again, I went down that road and I was like, why not? Let's just try it. Let's try.
Mhm,
I went to 2 OBs. At this point, I was mad at my own for not giving me the history lesson that I needed.
mhm.
And one OB said, I am against infertility treatment, so I will not provide this information for you. And she walked
Are
out the
you
door. I
serious?
was dead serious. She said, I don't believe in it. And I was like, you're a women's health doctor. Like your studies is in women's health. My health is I want to have a baby. And I'm crying to her. And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You can find somebody else. And she walked out of her door and left me on the table.
Crazy.
I
Crazy.
was I then went to find another doctor and she was like, well, I can only do these labs because your insurance already covered this for the beginning of the year, so we can't do it again. And it was like a whole to do.
Mhm,
And one day I got really sick and I ended up going to the urgent care.
mhm.
I'm so emotional and I'm angry at the world. I'm angry at anybody who walked by me. And this doctor comes in and she's like, so what are you here for? And I'm like, oh my God, I already told your nurse why I'm here. Why do I have to keep repeating myself? I don't understand the problem. She's looking at me like, okay, crazy lady. All right. What is your problem? And it's like, you guys, you know what? No one here wants to help me. And I am on a rant. I've gone full crazy and I'm
Mhm.
crying and there's snot coming out of my nose and I'm just yelling at her. And she's like, well, like she backed up because I could see like she was like, oh, you want to go toe to toe? We can go toe to toe. Like you coming in here yelling at me. It's
Yeah.
like, I just can't do this anymore. And she's like, what's the problem? So I was like, I have this script. I want to have a baby. No one wants to help me. And da 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 da. And she's like, let me see the script. She looked at the script and she's like, okay, I can do these tests, these tests, these tests, these tests right now. Like, what? She's like, yeah, I can do these for you right now. I was like, well, I don't have the money to pay for it. She's like, no, it's covered. It's covered. I can write it in and, say it's part of this.
Mhm.
She's like, okay. Okay. No, I'm speechless because now
You got me in tears right now. It's like,
she's like
ah.
my magician doctor, but she's not a fertility specialist. She's urgent care.
Mhm,
She was like an urgent care doctor. And she was young and I knew it threw her off. And I was just like anxiety ridden and just
mhm.
emotional.
It's a lot. That's what, that knowledge base of understanding what that emotion, how to
Yeah.
describe that emotions, because it's a lot.
Yeah. And she did all the tests, and I sent it off to Barbados, and they gave us a call, a consult, another phone consult, no charge. And she said, all right, this is what I see based on your labs and the ultrasound. And so I would suggest, we do this, and this. And that's how my treatment started. But I do want to say one thing. I did meet a doctor prior to the urgent care doctor, a fertility
Mhm.
specialist. And he told me that because of my age, that I was too old to have children. And I was 38 years old. So I was like, I'm
Wow.
not too old. He's like, yeah, you're too old. And I was like, I'm not too old. I'm 38 years old. Like, that's not old. And he's like, yeah, you're
Mhm.
old. And he kept repeating, you're old, you're old, you're old, you're old. And so when I spoke to, her name is Dr. Skinner in Barbados, Barbados Fertility Center, I asked her, I said, am I too old to have a child? I'm 38 years old. Like, no doctor wants to see me. I just, I'm overwhelmed. Like, what's happening to me? And she's like, well, based on a woman's egg count and how many eggs you have from birth to when you're in your 30s, they do decline. I
Mhm.
didn't know that. That was
I just learned that like when I first started my platform, you're born with like
with
millions,
millions.
billions of eggs. And
Yeah,
as you're going towards your
30. Yeah.
adolescence, your 13, that goes like way down. That by the time you're an adult, you're like at 100 and
Yeah.
something thousand.
Yeah.
And then depending on what your physical thing,
Yeah.
it's like, so
And
yeah.
she told me that on the phone, like, I didn't have to pay for that information. Like, that was such a, like, an enlightenment, like,
Mhm.
understanding for just
Mhm.
me, I was like, "Wait, oh, okay, so makes sense, I'm in my 30s." Not that I'm okaying that doctor to say that I'm old,
Right.
but he could have
Phrase is different.
educated me differently and said, based on, and of course, then we got to look at your genetics, and then if you have any health
Mhm.
issues, and on top of that, like, your 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 hormone levels, like, all of that is included.
Mhm.
I didn't know any of that. I
Yeah.
didn't know any of that, and so she told me that, and I was like, okay, so then what does that mean for me? It's just like, well, we can try Clomid, we can try IVF, we can talk about, surrogacy, we can talk about adoption, we can have these conversations. And like I said, prior to her, I didn't have any conversation with any doctor about this. I
Mhm.
learned about it on Google. Google was, Dr. Google was my,
Mhm.
but I still didn't even understand when I was reading a lot of it on Google because
Mhm.
it wasn't coming from a woman, a doctor, an educated doctor, and speaking to me as like, okay, I get that you're not sure about what is really happening. And
Mhm.
so that's when I got introduced to the Barbados Fertility Center, and I immediately fell in love with her. I was like, yeah, this is my magician. She's my magician. And that's where our journey began. Was
Wow.
there.
Wow. And your daughter now is how
Riley
old?
is 6 years old. We went through 3 rounds of IVF in Barbados, and she was the last egg that we thought would not work because she didn't have the best numbers.
Mhm.
She's a fighter. She fights me till this day. I know. So clearly there was something there from day one, and in actuality, it took us 10 years to have our first
Mhm.
child. So I had her at the age of 42. Her birthday
Mm.
is the day before mine. So I was
Wow.
turning 42 when she was born.
Wow.
So not how to share.
So you described the whole 10-year journey. At that 10-year mark when you had your daughter, what was your emotional mental state?
I was exhausted. I was
Mhm.
exhausted. Number one, from trying to learn an entire
Mhm.
medical industry and not be a
Right.
doctor, to there was a lot of anxiety and anger towards myself, towards people around me, a lot of sadness. I had to see a therapist.
Mhm.
And even, and then of course, then the hormone shots added,
Mm,
then the weight gain
mhm,
and the adult pimples, and then in being asked to come to every baby shower on the planet,
mm,
and it was exhausting. My
mhm,
mental state was very, very low. Even when I had her, I was physically and mentally exhausted, and I felt like I was not part of the world. I just did not have anything in me, and I wanted to give her everything,
mhm,
but I felt so depleted. So it took a while for me to like really find that happy place and be okay with me and be okay with my body and forgive myself and forgive my body. And
mhm.
I put a lot of strain and stress on me.
And what have you done from that point to now? And have you added anything to your daily routine that's was meant to get yourself back to the point that you feel alive, that you feel good with who you are, what you've accomplished, like a routine or a mental routine, meditation, exercise? Like, what do you do that kind of keeps you in that zone?
So one thing I do is, I mean, our mornings are nothing but chaos. But once we do drop off, I do go to the gym for at least 45 to an hour and just try to go completely blank. Just do my workout, let my body replenish, repair, refresh, do what it's needed every day. But I don't have like a routine. The only thing I really do is I try to stay positive. I try to work on my mindset, not allowing me to go down that negative rabbit hole that I know
Mhm.
it's easy. It's easier to find that negative rabbit hole than it is for me to find the positive side. And I try to laugh a lot. I try to work on a lot of socializing and just advocacy. I decided when we first started that I'm not going to keep quiet about this. I'm going to talk about it, and I'll tell my story, and I'll tell you all the dirty, ugly stuff about me and how I went down this road, because I have to remind myself that these are hard times and I went through it. I fought it. I found a way through it. And at one point I had to be okay with, if I did not have a child,
Mhm.
where would I be? What would I be? How would I be? And could I be okay? And I had to find a place in my life and in my void that I would be okay. So, and really, it's just through humor. I'm always trying to like say something in a weird like group setting, and they're like, "You're weird." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's okay.
And
It's
but that's something that for me it was the same at the end of that. I was approaching that 10-year end of change, I was at my lowest point, and it was about really, how do I get myself out of this, and then having that mindset conversation with myself as to, yes, of course, with my partner, but also myself, because the woman's whole toll on this, not to take away from the male, is it's a lot, because it's your body that everything is going through, right? And so all these treatments, shots, all these things have like just completely changed your whole system, right?
just
And I understood that at one point I was open to adoption and even being a foster parent. But at the end of that 10-year, I was done. I had seen a friend of mine, and she was adopting a child, and I went with her. And they were told right before that, I think a few months before that, they were going to have another baby. And a week before they were going to pick the baby up, they received an email that, hey, the mother changed her mind.
yeah.
And that was like gut wrenching. I was like, oh, hell no, I cannot go through that. Like, 10 years that I went through this, like to go through another type of emotion. And that kind of put in perspective where I was physically and mentally. And can I hold more?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, that is it. I'm taking control back. And it was, God had a major place in my life, and it was my faith, that last little drop of thread that I was holding on to. It was God that was kind of like I was holding on to. And I had the strength through that to kind of say, okay, I'm changing everything, whether
Yeah.
I have a child or not. Okay, we're moving on, but I need to find myself, and I need to find who I am, or else I'm lost
Yeah.
completely.
And there's that point in your life where you're just like, okay, who am I? What am I doing here? And why am I doing this? Because you're like you said, you're on the hormones, you're on the shots, and you want to explain to your husband or your partner what it is you're feeling, but the words aren't clear because you're not sure. So you
Yeah.
can't answer the question, and you can't you can't describe what you're feeling because there's so many, it's like juggling in your entire system, and no one's catching anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that point in your life where you're like, I have to just be okay. And
Mm.
when are you okay? And I had that conversation with a friend just the other day, and she said, I feel really bad because we're going through this fertility treatments, and I know it's a lot on my husband, and maybe I should stop. And what happens if I'm 45 and I have a child? That's just going to put a strain on our family. And so I was like, well, I mean, you will know when the right time to stop. You'll
Mm-hmm.
decide when one day you'll just wake up and you'll say, I'm okay with stopping treatment. I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay with not having a child. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with me. I'm okay with our life. But you have to decide that. And that
Yeah.
has to happen. And I was like, but you can't decide these things based on somebody else's feelings. And so
Exactly.
that's the other thing, like, is Johnny okay? I know I'm putting him
Right.
through a lot. I know my hormones are raging. I know maybe I just need to stop because it's too much on him. But it's heavier on me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not to discount, like I said earlier,
Exactly.
the partner, but it's like you have to have that separation. And I know sometimes, I've been asked, well, why don't you, you know, speak about the guy perspective? I said, because I'm speaking from my perspective.
Yeah.
I was like, the guy he can have his own podcast. Like, it's like I understand they go through through emotions,
Yeah.
they go through struggles, etc. But the thing is that I'm honing in on the woman's perspective, because you're receiving all these treatments,
Yeah.
and your body hormone and everything is just going out of whack from
I don't,
not just the treatments, but the mental, the like everything all at once. That what strength do you have to give the other person if you can't even hold yourself up?
yeah. Like, I want to touch on how you were in one of those big, big moments in our lives. The day of the wedding, I don't know if you remember this. Actually, prior to the wedding, you asked me a question. You said, do you want to have children at your wedding so that we know what kind of seating and what kind of menu? And we were already going through that path,
Mm,
and we were already talking to doctors. And it was already like I was too old.
mm,
So when you
wow.
asked that question, it was like a gut punch
Mm,
because I do want my friends and family there, and I know they have children. But do I want to see a ton of children running around on my day? I need a day. This is me. This is mine. I want this just to be
mhm,
about me. And we went home and we talked about it. And I was like, I don't know if I want to have people's children's there.
mhm,
That sounds weird. People's children. They're my family. They're my friends.
mm,
Children are my family and my friends. But I could not see them. And the weight of that, and just making decisions for other people to say,
mm,
you can't come to my celebration because what I'm going through. And I think we talked to you, and I was like, well, how do we say no to kids? And I don't know if it was you. No, I think it was Johnny. Johnny was like, look, let's just tell people we can't afford extra food if they're not going to eat it. We know kids don't eat. We'll have to pay per plate. We'll give them that excuse. And I felt like the end of the world because I had to lie to all these people. And I had to say no. And people were sending me messages. Oh, you sure I can't bring so-and-so? She's only 2. She won't eat anything. I'll pack my, it's like, no, they said no. They said no.
But that goes back to conversation. And outside of this fertility conversation of people respecting other people's wishes. Just simple as that, or people being considerate with other people's wishes. And it's not a bad thing, but it's us respecting each other and what decisions you have made. And you don't know what is behind those decisions, whether it's money, whether it's mental situation, a trauma, anything. So if we give that person respect of, oh, they decided no children, okay. So you don't know what's behind that reason.
No. And
so,
no one asked. No one asked, is there a reason? And then the day of the wedding, a couple came. I don't know if you remember this. I know it's been a while, but a couple came, and she came with her newborn. And I looked at her in like complete shock and was like, okay, shot to the heart. Okay. And she's like, don't worry. She's getting food from me. You don't have to worry about, paying for an extra plate. And she winked at me. That was not the point. Even though I said we can't afford it, but it was like, you still came with your baby. And I specifically said no children. And, that hurt. That hurt a lot. And so that was one time that I was like, maybe I should just stop doing this, because everything around me was just like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you putting yourself through this? Like, people aren't listening to your requests. Husband's like stressed out and you're hormonal. This is becoming costly. Why are you doing this? Why? And I think that's when I was like, okay, you know what? I need to stop. I need to stop caring about other people. If this is what I want to do, I need to just focus and do it.
And it's not about not caring. It's about separating your emotions.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
And it's not a bad thing being able to separate emotions, separate situations, separate, all these different things. It goes back to that respect of something was said, let's move ahead. And I think if we can all, whoever's listening, just have better sense of being respectful to one another, understanding, and there might be a reason that you may not know. Just respect that, because there's something behind every single decision. And if we're respectful of one another, it makes such a better world.
100%. Just that pause. If you just pause on your own life, I know
it's not about you.
It's not about you. And not everything is about you. So if you pause and you say, okay, well, this seems weird. Like, they're very much into family and you don't want children there. Pause for a second. Just think about it. Like, okay. Or even ask the question, hey, is there a reason? Like, but I know if I did tell a few people, they would be offended too. So, it's not always about you.
Yeah.
But those people don't always think that. It is always about
But
them.
you did have an amazing wedding. It was beautiful.
I
It was
did.
fun. It was
yes,
awesome.
and you did an amazing job. And people still, to this day, their pictures on Instagram and Facebook are from my wedding. And I'm like, oh, you got a good shot of yourself. Okay, I'm happy the lighting worked well for you.
No, that is great. So I'm gonna ask you a few more. Okay. With all that, now you have beautiful girl, and you're in a different time in your life. And I know at that time you were starting your entrepreneurial a platform. How did that have a play in your daily role of going and getting treatment, understanding, going to Mr. Google and saying, da, 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 spending, because how much time did you spend on Google?
Oh, like
Uh-huh.
that was a full-time job.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't get
So
paid for that.
how did that compare to you being an entrepreneur, and what was that whole journey like?
So I've been an entrepreneur since out of college. And when Johnny and I met, we went through something tragic. He had lost his mom, and he found out after that he was a diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in his early 30s being a diabetic. I don't know if you remember back in those days, all you saw were old people on their little scooters talking about I pricked
Mm-hmm.
myself in the like at 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And he felt really bad. He's like, I'm in my 30s and I got diabetes and I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
feel like that. Is this my life? So, with our entrepreneurial spirit, we're like, okay, well, let's make a change. Let's do something that will help you not feel like that and do better. So we started plugging away. It's called the Sugar Cube. It's an app that we created to help young people because we were all into taking photos of our food and, tracking our meals and, scanning where we've eaten. And we're like, let's put it all in one app. Let's make it. And it was just solely for him. It was
Mm-hmm.
not for anyone else, just so that he could feel like he wasn't in this like 60 to 90-year-old like
Mm-hmm.
disease,
Regimen.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
regimen. And that was the same time of us going through infertility. So we were doing both. So while I was like, going through diabetes walks and events and learning about diabetes and what, diabetes does to, people of color, women, gestational diabetes, cultural lifestyle with diabetes, I was also learning about infertility. So
Mm-hmm.
they were both kind of going hand in hand at
But
the
you
same.
are Mr. Google like for like
And
days.
so I was on Google, like I said, and then
You
I
were
think
dating Google. Like
I was married to Google and I got nothing, no gain out of it besides information. But yeah, that's been my passion. And then learning about infertility and learning about new tech and the the industry and the healthcare industry and the healthcare industry in the United States versus the healthcare industry globally. There's a
mm-hmm.
difference. And we started seeing it not just for diabetics, but for infertility care, for women's care, for cancer. There's a big community globally of people who've come up with ideas and ways to help. And
Mm-hmm.
we're so limited here because the medication I took in Barbados, they're not even allowed here, which is
Mm-hmm.
weird because it's the medication for my body. It was for me to help me get pregnant. And they were banned in the US. Why? Why do we have these, these
Red
little
tape.
red tape to separate our need? So as an entrepreneur, healthcare has always been something that's really been important to me. And the more I grow and learn, the more passionate I am about following through on this and making this work.
And what
Um,
sparked the idea of putting that pen to paper?
so as I was going through the first round of treatment, I felt very alone and I was really scared. And I felt like there was no one to really talk to besides talking to the specialists and the nurses. I felt like there was really no one there. So Johnny and I were talking, and I told him, I was like, I feel alone. I feel like there are no women out there to talk to about this. And I feel scared. And, I'm in a land of the unknown. And he's like, well, just talk to anybody. Like, and I was like, can't just do that. No one's talking about this issue. You don't just run around and like, hey, let me tell you about my infertility issues. And he's like, well, why not? I
The
was
other
like,
girl did, right?
yeah, but she was sharing with her friend that she got pregnant. She wasn't like really sharing. So, but I was like, yeah, why isn't anyone really talking about it? So I just started talking, and I started telling people like what we've been through, and funny issues on the stirrups, and the comfortable time at the doctor with snot and crying. And I didn't realize people were listening.
Mm.
And people were listening to a point where I had friends that were texting me, calling me, and saying, "Hey, I have a friend that's going through some fertility issues. You're the only one I know. Could you talk to her?" Yeah, sure. Why not? I'm just
Mhm.
going to tell you my story. I'm not a
Right.
doctor or certified anything. I'm just a normal
Mhm.
person just going through this. Then that started to spiral, and people started like, "Hey, I guess I opened up a door for other
Mhm.
people who didn't realize that this is a conversation." And a friend of mine said one day, she was like, "You should just write a book, because I mean, I would rather pick up your book and read it than have to call you when you're like, who knows doing what, to ask you like, what do you think?" And I was like, "You can call me and ask me what you think, but
Mhm.
that isn't a good idea to write my story, because at least it'll provide a big picture, like what the ups and the downs, the side to sides, what it feels like to go through this." And it's not just about hormone shots, it's not just about finding the right doctor, but it's about you and your emotional roller coaster emotions, and what you feel, what your losses are, what your gains are. And I decided that I wanted to put humor into it, because if you
Mhm.
can't laugh at some of the things that you went through, then all it's going to do is just break you down.
Yeah.
And that's where the start of, I mean, the book took about 3 years to get done.
But
But
you got it
I
done,
got
and
it done.
now it's awesome. So, and definitely we'll share the link in the show
Yeah,
notes. But I'm proud of you
thank
to
you.
even take that step because you had to recollect everything. And it's like going through that process again mentally. And then you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I went through this. It's because sometimes it goes back in this little door,
Door,
right?
yep.
Because it was so traumatic that you forget until like for me, I decided 2 years ago to share my story, and it started first in a magazine for the event industry. And I was like so excited. I was like, and so I'm putting the story together, and it was like, oh my gosh, wait, I went through this. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
like I went through this. And so it just brings up so much of that trauma that it's like, okay, I'm going through it and I feel good right now. And the reason I felt good was because one, I had already gone through the journey and I felt like I found my place. I found my purpose, right?
Yeah,
Because that's a whole different thing, understanding what your purpose is and understanding that you can control everything,
yeah,
right? And I was then connecting with people in my industry that they were having issues from other countries, right? And even from the US. But, I was going to some events and this one girl, she was talking about her situation and another person was talking about, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is still a thing. This is still
yeah,
a hard conversation. It's like, and then she found out that I went through it. She was like, what? And I was like, oh, yes. So it was almost around that time that I was actually launching everything and feel so good and so full of energy because I want to give back. I shared my story again in a book, and there's some other sequel things that I'm working on. I created a journal. And so putting it out there, creating resources for people like you created this book, which is a resource, which I
yeah,
have it on my platform as well. If you want it, it's in there. I'll share the link. And it's important because whether, like you said, the algorithm, as soon as I started looking up infertility on social media, whatever, now like you see so many different things. So with your book, what is your next step? What's your next goals?
with the book, sorry, I paused on what you were saying, because it took 3 years to write, and it was very emotional. So just reliving some of it, was hard. So what my plan for the book was to just not just be a resource, but to be that friend when you feel
Mhm.
alone, that you know that it's not just me, it's not just you, Jacqueline. There's
A
many
lot.
women, and there are women in our family and in our
Mhm.
circle of friends that are afraid to open up, if it's like cultural or
Mhm.
religious, whatever it is. There's a door there. And so, what I really want to provide with this book is not just show you that I'm an advocate for you, but I'm a supporter, I'm a friend for you. And there are a lot of us in the same path, in the same road, going the same direction. So, regardless of the algorithm on social media, if it brings
Mhm.
you to infertility, women going through struggles and sharing their stories on a day to day, there are neighbors and friends and families that are going through the same thing. And maybe you just need the courage also to just speak up and
Mhm.
be open and be okay, and be
Mhm.
okay with what people think. Like,
Yeah.
that's my path. And because my path is also medical, tech, health industry, I really want to find more than just let's do medication. Let's add holistic
Mhm.
lifestyle to this. Let's do better education for young women to understand their eggs. And maybe in your 20s, let's talk about freezing those eggs. Yeah, you don't have the right partner yet, but if you want to hold off, you have younger eggs.
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about what it means to have infertility issues. What are these conversations? So I want to provide not just, a book, but depth to what is out there, and it's constantly changing, and it's always going to be there. And right now in our political environment, what does possibility of an IVF ban mean? Does that mean going out of
Mhm.
country? Is there a fear of going out of country? So there's a lot of information that in one book, I know it may feel overwhelming, but there are answers there, and there's someone there that's been walking through those same steps with you.
And when you shared about, creating a tech or something like that, right, for this piece, the visual, I'm going to share with you the visual that I just got. You know how when growing up, now I'm going to age myself, you had the turned on Saturday um the channel for cartoons, and then you see the commercial. Yes, I'm only a bill, and you go, and it shows the process of going through the bill, going to
No, yep.
college, doing this, and then being veto and going back or forward. And so I was visualizing, giving you some free stuff here, just this whole type of thing of a baby and a girl, baby girl with all
This
these eggs
new
and
and
these
and
little,
we're
like,
changing.
because humor to me, like, I laugh, my husband and I, like 24/7, like every day. There's not one day, no matter what we're going through, that there's laughter. And that is one of the top medicines that I can recommend. And that is, it's not about laughing out our trauma,
Mhm.
but it's being, it allows you to be human,
Yeah,
to get in tune with your emotions. So laughter is like my 24/7
and
thing,
laughter
right?
is healing.
It's healing.
Yeah.
It is so like, oh my gosh. And when you do that laughter from the belly,
Oh,
oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's even like, what? Can I get that 24/7? But, do like creating something like that, adding humor to it, that because that commercial was funny,
Yeah.
but it was informative,
Yeah, it was.
right? So it's like, I know it's a serious conversation, but sometimes it gets too serious that you
Yeah.
need some laughter
And
healing.
and I think also what I also wanted to add about additional to the book is therapy.
Yeah.
You don't have to lay on a chair and, boohoo to your therapist, but therapy could be in line with other advocates that are understanding where you've been through.
Mhm.
certain people who are writing books, podcasts. There are people there that you can use as therapy to help you with
Mhm.
this. I shied away from therapy, and writing this book, people have told me this was a good therapy. This was the therapy I
Yeah,
needed. Like, I had questions, and I know my therapist wasn't going to answer it because they're not supposed to tell me
yeah,
what to do. But I needed ideas or somebody outside to say, well, this is what I did. I mean, you can
yeah.
try it. If it works for you, it works for you. But there's a line of therapy that's necessary for
Mhm.
infertility, which should be aligned in our healthcare industry with infertility. Even if you pay out of pocket, there should be a therapist there,
Yeah.
your nurse, your consult, your therapist.
And for me, it wasn't highlighted. And I did see a therapist once for a quick minute, and it was at the end of my whole before I said that's it. And it didn't like help. But again, my therapy was God. It was my faith. And it was like, the best thing to help me turn around. And then now that you mention, and I agree, it doesn't have to be you going to a therapy office and that's it. There's so many other tools. So I've connected with different professionals in the, health industry, and that's what I'm building these connections so I can put it as a resource as well. But one of the therapy companies, organizations that I connected with, they created this Zoom, infertility holiday. If you're going through, the holidays are coming, and just to have a support
Yeah.
thing. And I actually joined them. I was like, can I join? I know I'm past all this stuff, but I just want to be a support. I want to be a fly on the wall. If I need, to share anything, I would love to. But I did the first two that they did. They still have two more. But that was like, therapy.
Yeah.
And so it was like really, really, you don't have to see yourself, quote unquote, in an office,
No.
or there's so many different, and not to take away from that, because that might be for a lot of people. But for me, it didn't help. Other things helped. So understanding that therapy can be a slew of things, right?
Yeah. And my therapy, honestly, I felt I would talk to my therapist when I was in my car. And that was like, I needed my private space. I
Yeah.
wanted just to, be there, just her and I.
Hmm.
And, I didn't want to go into an office. I didn't,
Yeah.
I was uncomfortable. And
And that's a
I,
lot.
yeah,
That's also a lot sometimes when you're going through these emotional, depending on the stage that you're on, that you're in with the stage of emotions, whether you just came out of getting your shots or you just came out of getting your period.
period.
It
Yes.
didn't work. Like, that whole process. But so if you had a superpower, what would it be?
If I had a superpower, I think I would want the power to help heal.
Mm,
Healing, emotional, mental, probably not physical. That might be a little hard of a superpower,
mhm,
but adding some kind of, we're all in so much pain, not just, infertility. That's just one part of our little world. It's relationships, it's family, it's
mhm,
career, it's getting up to just go to the gym. There's a lot of pain, chronic pains, just mental things that are sitting there. And if there was something that I could really, really help with, that's what I would want to do.
mm.
That would be my superpower.
Awesome.
Finding a way
So,
to just tune in.
yeah, yeah. And so out of everything that we shared and discussed and you shared, what are a few takeaways that you feel you would like the listeners to take with them?
The biggest takeaway I would hope from the listeners would be for them to know that they're not alone in the struggles.
Mm,
Like I said, whether it's family, entrepreneurship, life changing situations, there's hope, there's faith, there's help, there's 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 this presence there that's available. And I really, if it's finding your community, or, like I said, for me, it's humor and being wonky sometimes and making the uncomfortable comfortable. But what I really want people to really get from who I am and what my place in this world is as of now, and who I know of myself right now, is that there's a place, and there's a place for you, and the struggles are only temporary. Your struggle today won't be the same struggle tomorrow. And there's help. There's doors there to open up. It's hard to fight that fear, but you can muster through it. We muster through worse.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we as women, and in the society where they make things even more complicated and harder, we find a way. No matter, you say, no, well, it's hard. Yeah, but you found a way to do that. So you can do this. It may be baby steps, it may be little tiny steps. It may not be a step today, but there are ways for you to help get the help you need, ask for the help you want, but know that you're not alone. You're not the only one going through this, and there's resources out there.
Awesome. And how can they connect with you?
So you can find my book on www.mandy, Mandy Refvik, REFVIK.com. You can also find my book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and the Apple Store. You can also find me on Instagram at Imperfect IVF, and author at Mandy Refvik, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I'm on everything.
You're everywhere. And I'll share it in the show notes as well. But thank you. And thank you for being here. Anything you want to share? Any last words?
No, I'm happy we got to reconnect. I'm so happy we got to talk. And I'm still very, very fond of you. And you are an amazing entrepreneur. I've been following you since the wedding. I'm like, oh my God, this woman, she's traveling the world. She's doing big things. I want to be her. Like, you've been doing it. And I am very proud of you. And I'm so happy that we met and we got to connect. And I think this is an amazing platform of what you're offering, and it will be so helpful for others.
Awesome. And I actually want to share that this is a really full circle moment for me. I know when we reconnected on social, it was like, just seeing your story and just you mentioning the book that you're working on, and just reconnecting on that level, it was like such a full circle moment. And I was like, I don't want to say that, my other couples were not one of the best, but you and Johnny definitely brought in the humor. So, Daryl and I totally appreciated that. But
we still talk about you guys.
But it's so funny how that full circle moment just comes about, and it's like, wow. It's like, okay, God, all right, like this is really happening, this whole different connection, because there's a lot of different things with different clients that, not a whole lot, but there's a few clients that there's a different connection happening with everything else I'm working on, that it's like, wow, so understanding your purpose. And thank you for sharing that. But I'm very humble when, I've just always been, when I found that point in my life that I said, that's it, I'm not going to be a statistic. I'm not allowing myself to be a statistic. Whatever happens, happens. My life just changed 360 degrees. And, I had to take different steps, make different changes in my life. And I'm in love with just being myself,
Yes.
And being myself, and also helping others by just me being myself. And that's what I know is my purpose, that if I just show that I'm myself, and that's who I've always been, that people saying, oh my gosh, like I just follow you and I love, it's like, okay, so how did that bless you? How did that encourage you? How can I help you get to your next level type of thing? So that's a
Yeah.
whole different thing that I'm working on for 2025, because some people are like, oh my gosh, even some clients were like, I just wanted to call you just to hear your voice because you're
Yes.
just so soft spoken. It's like that was my therapy for the day. And I was like, how do I bottle that and
Yeah, I
sell
know.
that?
I know. Can I just tell you that one thing that was like an amazing feeling was after I just, was talking about what I was going through, a woman I had met through a friend. We never became friends, but the first thing she said to me, she sent me a message and she's like, I wanted you to be the first to see my ultrasound. We don't
Mm,
have that. Like, I just told her my story, I
mhm.
shared what I'd been through, and she said, I needed you to be the first one to see, because I've been going through this. We finally are pregnant, and I need you to see our first ultrasound. And like that brought me to tears.
Yeah,
Because
it's
I was
that
like,
whole
this is my
connection.
purpose.
Yeah, yeah. So once you find that, it aligns. So, whatever journey anyone's going through, the struggle, the trauma, like Mandy said, it's temporary. And I know it's hard to see how temporary that is because you're in it,
Yes.
but reach out.
Yeah.
There's so much support, resources. Reach out to Mandy, reach out to me, like whatever it is that's easy for you, just reach out because there is support. There is, you don't have to be in this by yourself. But I thank you, Mandy, for sharing your story, and definitely get her book and connect with her as well. Thank you again for being here.
Thank
And I
you.
am so excited. So I hope everyone got a lot of, were able to tune into the whole journey and the process, but also get an understanding that, things are temporary, and no matter how hectic it might seem, there are better days for sure.
There
So
are.
stay tuned and make sure to comment. Please connect with Mandy, but also comment here, follow, share this, and stay tuned for the next episode of Inspired by Jacqueline. Take care. Bye.